Taiwan welcomes the newest addition to its naval fleet. Paraguay says it's looking for $1 billion in investment from Taiwan to maintain diplomatic ties. But is it a request or a warning? The cost of power is surging, but not for Taiwanese consumers. That means further losses for Taiwan's state-run power company. And a very special tradition in northwestern Taiwan as a boat for the gods sets sail. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen visited the southern city of Kaohsiung on Friday for the handover of the country's latest domestically produced warship. With a displacement of over 10,000 tons, the Yushan is the first in its class and will be used to carry supplies and personnel to Taiwan's outlying islands. In wartime, it can move large numbers of troops and military equipment like tanks and armoured vehicles. Tsai said the new ship demonstrates the resolve of Taiwan's Navy.
我也听说我们海军官兵自愿请调到玉山军舰，就是希望能够接受接见的任务的挑战，来提升专业能力。
The president of Paraguay has told the Financial Times he wants $1 billion in Taiwanese investment to maintain diplomatic ties. Taiwan's foreign ministry says this is just a call for investment and that relations are stable. But analysts say that the public nature of the request may be meant to send a warning. John Van Trieste has more.
Just days after calling for Taiwan's inclusion in the UN, and with 65 years of ties between them, the president of Paraguay, Mario Abdo Benitez, wants more from the relationship. He's now calling on Taiwan to invest $1 billion as he faces growing pressure to sever ties and recognize Beijing. In a Financial Times article, Abdo said Taiwan invests much higher sums in countries that aren't its allies. He said his government wants to make bilateral ties more worthwhile to ordinary Paraguayans, especially farmers who are shut out of the Chinese market. Abdo is a vocal supporter of Taiwan, and Taiwan's foreign ministry says that's not about to change.
他在专访的时候，他强调的是说，巴拉圭的投资的条件非常的优异，所以他希望台商呢能够借由这个巴拉圭投资。 去进军到南美的市场，任内两国的邦谊不会改变。
The ministry says there is no quid pro quo with Paraguay, and Paraguay's foreign minister has said shared values, not money, are the basis of ties. But some analysts say Abdo may be sending Taiwan a warning by making his request openly in the press.
我们还是要去理解他整个谈话后面一个大的背景，或是这样的一个要求，是不是其实早就对我们政府提出来，但是可能是因为一些原因而没有办法实现，他才会透过在外媒专访的场合里面把它讲出来。
Paraguay is by far the largest of the 14 countries that still recognize Taiwan. If it cuts ties with Taiwan, it will be the 9th country to do so since Tsai Ing-wen took office in 2016. The pressure Abdo says he's under in Paraguay shows that China's efforts to expand its influence are not slowing down. Damon Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
When this International Civil Aviation Organization opened its triennial meeting earlier this week, U.S. Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg spoke up for Taiwan's inclusion. Since then, more countries have also backed Taipei's participation.
Appelle aujourd'hui davantage de solidarité. C'est le sens du mot solidarité. Aucun pays ne doit être laissé de côté.
Representatives from Japan and New Zealand also made similar statements. Taiwan's foreign ministry has expressed its gratitude for the gestures of support. Taipei has not been invited to attend the Triennial Assembly since 2013 due to pressure from Beijing. America's ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, has said U.S. policy toward Taiwan has not changed, adding that Chinese actions are threatening peace in the Taiwan Strait. Burns made the comments to a Milken Institute event in Singapore, during which he also criticised what he called Beijing's overreaction to Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan last month. Analysts have debated whether U.S. policy on Taiwan had changed after President Joe Biden publicly stated Washington would defend Taiwan against Chinese invasion. Beijing lodged stern representations with the U.S. after Biden's comments and said it damaged U.S.-China relations. But at the Milken Institute event, Burns said it was China that was changing the cross-strait status quo.
That's the party that's changing things. And our message to the Chinese privately, as well as publicly over the last 2 months is, we're not going to go along with this. And we're going to try to reinforce the status quo in the Taiwan Strait that's kept the peace for 60 years. I actually don't think the Chinese have any misunderstanding of U.S. policy. They don't agree with our policy, but we've been clear about the one China policy.
The cost of power is surging across the world, but Taiwan is freezing electricity rates. That's contributing to the state-run power company's deficit, which is expected to reach $6 billion by the end of the year. Louise Watt reports.
Taiwan's state-run power company Taipower is holding a design award as it tries to be more creative in communicating with the public about electricity and energy. The company announced in mid-September it will spend $18 billion over the next 10 years to improve the grid's reliability after widespread power cuts that caused public anger. But it's facing criticism for failing to mention how it will source its electricity, raising questions about whether such a large sum of money is being spent where it's needed.
我们电源端开发计划花费的钱，事实上是比电网端远远更多的。台中电厂、那个新达电厂、通霄电厂等等都在建设当中，所以它的量体事实上是非常的大的。
Taipower's plan to improve reliability of the grid follows a series of blackouts, including one in March that left 5 million households and businesses without power for hours. Taiwan's grid is highly centralized in 3 main substations. Taipower wants to decentralize and modernize the electricity system. As Taipower's costs soar, energy experts are questioning why the government has frozen electricity rates when the international fuel price is surging. The rates are next up for review in 6 months' time, after Taiwan's local elections take place.
上工业用电的话是行不通的，民生用电还有包括服务业用电也都会有涨价的压力，事业调整的压力很大。
Taiwan's government wants to keep inflation in check, but Taipower is suffering as fuel prices increase owing to global inflation and Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
目前的亏损是已经到了1500亿左右了哈，那后续这一段时间再加上去，预估应该会推到2000亿的这个规模。
Observers say if Taiwan doesn't raise electricity prices next year, Taipower's deficit will just grow larger. Patrick Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's quarantine hotels are getting ready to go back to normal. Taiwan is phasing out quarantine for new arrivals on October 13th. That means Taiwan's 308 quarantine hotels, with their more than 20,000 rooms, will be reopening to ordinary travellers. The government is offering hotel operators subsidies of around $160 per room to help make up for lost revenue. Many hotels are already looking forward to the return of regular tourists.
目前的话，预计大概出估大概在500万以内，当然还是乐观其成，一定会站在5成以上啦。
Taiwan's legislature has passed an amendment to a law governing the use of weapons by police. It comes after 2 police officers were killed on the job in the southern city of Tainan in August this year. The amendment would expand the use of firearms under 4 circumstances: if a suspect attacks a police officer with a dangerous object, if they are in possession of a lethal weapon, or if they intend to seize a police officer's weapons, and when the life of a police officer or another person is endangered. A former magistrate of Nantou County in central Taiwan has been found guilty of an additional 81 counts of corruption and sentenced to a combined 400 years in prison. On Thursday, the Taichung branch of Taiwan's High Court sentenced 72-year-old Li Zhaoqing for crimes including soliciting bribes for reconstruction projects, in the county following a devastating typhoon. He can appeal this latest ruling. Lee led the county from 2005 to 2012, representing the Kuomintang. The case has been ongoing for more than 8 years, and Lee was previously found guilty of 17 counts of corruption. The cumulative prison term of 400 years is the longest sentence ever handed down to a local government head for corruption in Taiwan. Taiwan's military is practicing for the upcoming National Day celebration with dozens of aircraft flying over the country. This year there will be 3 women that will be taking to the skies for the grand ceremony on October 10th. Jaime Ocon has their story.
Flying high above the skies of Taiwan's capital Taipei are the Thunder Tigers, a squadron of planes that perform aerobatics and is part of the country's Air Force. One of the pilots at the helm for this year's celebrations is Zhong Jingyi. Her ability to scramble a fighter jet at speed won her the Model Officer Award in 2017.
得到这一项的殊荣，是因为在连队上的长官及底下的同仁们的协助及帮忙，那自己要更加的珍惜这份样的荣耀，然后继续的努力。
There is another woman making her mark with the Thunder Tigers. Xie Yunting is a reserve pilot. She's only the 3rd female fighter pilot to join Taiwan's Air Force. Xie flies the F-5 Tiger.
看自己能不能挑战雷虎训，然后当一个成功的雷虎，中华民国第一个女雷虎。
Other female soldiers from the Army will be taking part in the National Day celebrations, like Lieutenant Colonel Huang Ziting. She's been flying this helicopter, called the Black Hawk, for over a decade and previously trained in the U.S.
第一次教官带我们做体验飞行，在飞机离地的时候啊，看到地面的景物它变得越来越小，然后离我们也越来越远。那时候的感觉是觉得很兴奋。
As these high-flying military pilots showcase their skills for National Day, they say that they are ready to make the nation proud and hope to be an inspiration for women in the country. Alex Chen and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's central bank chief has ruled out imposing foreign exchange controls, despite fears of capital flight from Taiwan. The Taiwan dollar has fallen 13% against the U.S. dollar this year, and with tensions with China rising, there were concerns early this week the central bank might impose restrictions to stop money flowing out of Taiwan. But Yang Jinlong, the central bank governor, says that Taiwan can cope with any capital outflows. He added that current volatility was mainly due to a series of U.S. Federal Reserve rate hikes. These are drawing money away from other countries as investors look to get higher returns in the U.S.
我们的外汇存底足够，我们的外币流动性足够，还有再加上我们国人外币存款大约有2700亿，我们国人的储蓄对外在国外的一个净资产呢，将近有8000亿。如果说以这样的一个资源来讲，台湾呢应该是没有多大问题。
Taiwan's railways are scrambling to get operations back on track following damage from a 6.8 magnitude earthquake earlier this month. There's still travel chaos in some lines in eastern Taiwan with the ongoing maintenance work. While a 60-kilometre section has been repaired, other parts are expected to take another 6 months to restore. A train ride between Hualien and Taidong in the east normally takes about 2 hours, but now takes about twice as long, as travellers need to switch between trains and shuttle buses. Coming up here on TaiwanPlus, who's that on the plane? Find out after the break.
我们真的很久没有表演，
走到了一个必须要停下来的状态。
因为我又不会看谱，
就不知道哪来的韵，有些人喜欢。
想想我最擅长的事情好像是玩团。
其实我的歌很多都是在解决我自己遇到的问题。
我通常会发脾气或者是暴怒，是因为不公平。
发现我对舞台是不熟悉的。
诚实的讲述你自己，就会有人听。
According to CNN, of a survey of done of 40 of the foods that you need to eat in Taiwan, roe fine or braised pork rice is at the very top. This is the #1 thing. $15 US, 16 US dollars, 18 US dollars.
Wait, what? Huh? Wait.
Did we get the wrong card?
No, don't waste your money. Just go and eat what local people eat.
Jason's Table Shocked and Surprised is now available on TaiwanPlus.
Okay, there's a couple here. There's one here. You see, 2, 3. 到目前的为止，大概6次而已啊，真的不多。赚不到钱呢，油钱也不够啊。来了，你看，又来了。I'm going to prepare them in a more European way. I'm going to smoke these eels. The best part, put it in your mouth.
In a changing world, when voices are being silenced, TaiwanPlus is listening.
It's our below legal.
We tell those stories. No compromise, no boundaries,
People in Taiwan.
no fear.
I want to study Chinese. I'm Ryan Kilpatrick.
Capital Taipei. TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus News.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. U.S. President Joe Biden has met with leaders from 14 Pacific Island states at the conclusion of a 2-day summit at the White House. All of the delegates to the landmark meeting signed on to a declaration resolving to strengthen ties between Washington and the Pacific. This included the Beijing-friendly Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, which was expected to disassociate itself from the document. Biden used the occasion to launch a diplomatic initiative, the Pacific Partnership Strategy. Over $800 million have been committed to the strategy to boost Pacific economies and strengthen resilience to climate change.
It's an initiative we really care about to more effectively coordinate with our allies and partners around the world to better meet the needs of the people across the Pacific. That's why this historic summit. At this historic summit, we're making additional and concrete commitments. And we're launching our Pacific Partnership Strategy, the first national U.S. strategy for Pacific Islands, which is a key component to our broader Indo-Pacific strategy.
For more on this new partnership between the U.S. and Pacific Island countries, our reporter Ryan Kilpatrick spoke with Mihai Sora, a Pacific Islands researcher at the Lowy Institute in Australia.
How significant is this summit and the declaration that's come out of it?
I think this summit is a real marker in the sand for US re-engagement in the Pacific. We've seen over the past year or so a lot of high-level US visits to the region and individual statements here and there about their commitment to the region. But where it's fallen short is, there's been skepticism on the part of Pacific countries as to how deep can that engagement go and what can the US really bring and how long can they sustain it. So this summit is a tremendous success in that the declaration that was achieved is very wide-ranging. The US got all the parties to sign up to their 11-point declaration. And it's a really strong symbol for what the US and Pacific countries will be working together on into the future.
This comes against the backdrop of increasing Chinese efforts to shore up their influence in the region. So how does this declaration compare to what Beijing is offering these countries?
There is a lot of overlap. Beijing has also made attempts to capture the language that Pacific countries want to see in declarations of this sort to do with climate change and economic development and development cooperation. Where it differs significantly is that the US is prioritizing existing regional institutions like the Pacific Islands Forum. The Pacific way of cooperating on economic and security and social challenges in the region is to work through established regional architecture. And that is very much front and center to the language that's coming out of this summit. And I think that'll be a real advantage for the US in maintaining its presence and its engagement with Pacific countries.
As you just noted, this declaration is big on regionalism and regional organizations. How does this compare to China's strategy in dealing with countries in the region?
So China typically only deals with countries that recognize China, as opposed to Taiwan, for example. And so it does organize regional meetings with those Pacific countries that recognize China to the exclusion of the others. So there's already a bit of a schism in the region as a result of those sorts of settings. But also typically China prefers to work bilaterally, have one-on-one engagement, and it seems to be making far more progress in that one-on-one engagement, a sort of divide and conquer approach, if you will, rather than working with countries collectively. But that has drawn criticism and I'd say increased the tensions in the region as a result of that schism between those countries that recognize Taiwan and China. And Pacific countries, each and every one of them, want to work cooperatively with larger powers, and they don't want to be forced to choose sides, and they certainly don't want to be pushed away from each other based on individual bilateral relations that individual Pacific countries might have.
Emergency crews in Florida are trying to reach residents stranded by floodwaters from Hurricane Ian, with concerns that the death toll could rise. U.S. President Joe Biden said it could be the deadliest hurricane in the state's history. At least 15 people are known to have died, and millions of homes and businesses are without power. A storm surge turned roads into rivers and flooded a hospital. The hurricane earlier left 2 dead and caused an island-wide blackout in Cuba. U.S. officials warn the hurricane has intensified as it barrels toward North and South Carolina. Rights groups have blasted guilty verdicts handed to Myanmar's former leader Aung San Suu Kyi by a military court. Suu Kyi was given 3 years under the country's secrets law. The democracy icon and leader of opposition to decades of military rule in Myanmar has been detained since a coup in February last year. She has now been sentenced to more than 17 years in prison and still faces more charges. Rights group Amnesty International condemned the sentences against both Suu Kyi and her Australian economic advisor, Sean Turnell, who was also sentenced to 3 years this week.
The charges are bogus, and they're basically designed to crush any remnant of the civilian government that the military overthrew in the early hours of February 1st, 2021. So they can't be taken seriously. They're completely trumped up.
A U.S. report has labelled Taiwanese seafood products as goods produced by forced labour for the second consecutive time. Taiwan's distant water fishing fleet has long been criticised by rights groups for its treatment of fishermen from mostly Southeast Asian countries. The U.S. Department of Labor's latest report says workers are recruited by agencies that sometimes deceive them about wages. Workers' identity documents are often confiscated and they can work up to 22 hours a day. The U.S. first included Taiwanese seafood on its list of goods produced by forced labour in 2020. Taiwan's fisheries agency says it will continue to work to improve conditions for migrant fishermen. A Pokemon-themed plane belonging to Taiwan's flag carrier China Airlines took off on its maiden flight on Friday morning. It's the country's last flight to nowhere before it scraps quarantine requirements next month. Leslie Liao was at the airport for the event.
It's 7:50 in the morning and I'm at Taoyuan International Airport. It may be early, but you know what? You can feel the electricity in the air because people are lining up for a very special flight. The China Airlines Pokemon plane is about to take its maiden voyage. Where's it going? Absolutely nowhere. When the COVID-19 pandemic first started nearly 3 years ago, Taiwan closed its borders. That made international travel in and out of the country next to impossible. To give people the travel experience, airlines in Taiwan pushed out so-called flights to nowhere. People got on planes, flew around for a little bit, and then landed in the same place. Starting Sunday, there's going to be daily flights between Taipei and Tokyo. Tickets are already sold out through most of November and December. And just like that, Taiwan's travel industry is blasting off again. Asnaya Zhou, Maggie May, and Leslie Liao at Taiwan Taoyuan International Airport.
A centuries-old tradition in Taiwan is nearing its climax. A boat for the deities is done and ready to begin its voyage. Eric Gao explains.
Finishing touches on a boat fit for the gods. This vessel, known as a king boat, is built every 5 years in northwestern Taiwan's Mailiao Township to appease the deities. This tradition is particularly important to disciples of the plague god, who feel it's especially significant this year.
祖先都老了，拢代代拢接这个工课吼，都甲办落来，5年一度，5年一度就是讲，今年咱的疫情足严重，阮要用拜轮造完船来治疫情吼，这个王船甲办好，看这疫情赶紧落过去安尼。
This year's king boat cost over $30,000 US and took over 3 months to build. Now that it's done, the king boat will be taken for a procession around the area.
13庄头各寺庙吼，拢要出去运境，所以咱王船会拖出去咱的庄头吼，所有各寺庙拢有出去运境，所以咱10个、初7、初8、初9拢这3天。
Locals hope the king boat will help bring prosperity.
大家平安大家多赚钱安尼所以王船大家拢计希望讲大家拢出来绕境，等大家家好平安顺遂安尼。
Another ceremony will be held in mid-November when the boat is formally put out to sea. Andy Xue and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, we leave you with images of the beauty of Venice in Italy. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.